Global Atmospheric Circulation by Kate O'Donnell. The air molecules that make up Earth's atmosphere are always moving. We call moving air molecules wind. The general wind patterns around Earth are called global atmospheric circulation. Global atmospheric circulation is caused by uneven heating of the Earth by the sun and by the Earth's rotation. The Earth is shaped like a ball, so sunlight hits directly on the equator, but at an angle everywhere else. Sunlight hits the poles at the sharpest angles, so these areas receive the least amount of light and heat from the sun. We use a 3-cell model to describe how air moves through the Earth, but there are actually 6 cells. The first cell is called a Hadley cell. Warm air from the equator rises and moves toward the poles. At around 30 degrees latitude, the air cools and drops back to the Earth. This cold air makes its way back to the equator, where it warms up and rises again. Rising air causes an area of low pressure at the equator. Low pressure areas have lots of precipitation because the rising air carries water vapor that condenses into clouds as it rises and cools. Falling air at 30 degrees latitude causes an area of high pressure. High-pressure areas have little precipitation. Many deserts exist along the 30-degree latitude line. If the Earth didn't rotate, air would move in a straight line from the equator to 30 degrees latitude. However, the Earth does rotate, and because it is shaped like a ball, the middle of the Earth rotates faster than the poles. Since the air is moving faster at the equator, as it moves north, it is deflected to the right. As it moves south, it is deflected to the left. This phenomenon is called the Coriolis effect. The wind created by air moving along the surface from 30 degrees latitude to the equator moves from the northeast to southeast in the northern hemisphere and southeast to northwest in the southern hemisphere. Early sailors found these winds helpful for trade, so they named them the trade winds. At the poles, cold air sinks and moves toward the equator. The sinking air creates high pressure at the poles. Antarctica is the largest, driest desert on Earth. As a result of the Coriolis effect, the winds caused by air moving from the poles to 60 degrees latitude move from northeast to southwest in the northern hemisphere and southeast to northwest in the southern hemisphere. Meteorologists name winds from where they start, so these winds are called the polar easterlies. Around 60 degrees latitude, air from the poles warms and rises. The warm air returns to the poles where it cools and falls again. This circulation of air makes up the polar cell. At 60 degrees latitude, the polar cell meets the ferrule cell. The ferrule cell circulates between 30 degrees latitude and 60 degrees latitude. Rising air at 60 degrees latitude creates an area of low pressure that causes significant precipitation over North America and Europe. At 30 degrees latitude, the ferrule cell meets the Hadley cell from the equator. Here, cold air from both cells sinks to the ground. The cold air then flows toward either the poles or the equator. The Coriolis effect causes the wind from the air molecules traveling back up to 60 degrees latitude within the ferrule cell to move from southwest to northeast in the northern hemisphere and northwest to southeast in the southern hemisphere. Meteorologists call these winds the westerlies. There are 2 latitudes with very little wind, along the equator where air rises and at 30 degrees latitude where it falls. In the past, ships got stuck in these calm waters without a breeze to carry them out. Sailors called the windless band around the equator the doldrums because it made them feel bored and depressed to wait for the wind. Sailors named the area around 30 degrees latitude the horse latitudes because sailors stuck there would sometimes throw horses on the ship overboard to conserve food and water. The rising air at 60 degrees latitude does not cause calmer winds because the cold air from the poles meets warmer air from the ferrule cells. The dramatic temperature difference causes unstable weather, such as thunderstorms. Global atmospheric circulation affects places on Earth in many ways. It creates deserts like the Sahara Desert in Africa and the Great Victoria Desert in Australia. Global atmospheric circulation also contributes to local weather and creates the jet streams that make flying from California to New York faster than flying from New York to California. Most importantly, the global atmospheric circulation acts like an air conditioner to keep the Earth cool. The equator collects more heat than it releases back into space, and the poles lose more heat to space than they receive from the sun. By moving heat through global atmospheric circulation, the Earth maintains a global temperature that can support life. The end.